Welcome back to All Day Live. We're watching these events unfold in the Middle East as Operation Epic Fury continues to play out. I just wanted to whiteboard a couple of things for you in terms of just a timeline here. So I did go over this with our guest who's gonna join us here in just a minute, just to make sure that we have this accurately. But it's a historical timeline that brings us to today. So 1979, the Islamic Revolution, is something you're going to hear a lot about as we have these conversations in the coming days and weeks and maybe months. 1941 to 79, the Shah of Iran was in charge. This was a monarchy supported by the U.S. and other Western nations. Then in 1979, this is why this pivotal year is kind of the epicenter of a lot of what's been happening. 1979, the Iranians, 98% of them end up voting to oust the Shah, and the Shah flees. The Ayatollah Khomeini takes over at that point. He is the supreme leader. He names himself the supreme leader. He's also a Shia cleric. It goes from a monarchy in Iran to now an Islamic republic. Okay. Then in November of 1979, just to get even more specific, the Shah comes to the U.S. So the Shah, who has been ousted, comes to the U.S. for some cancer treatment. There's suspected U.S. efforts by some in Iran that the U.S. and the Shah are trying to put the Shah back into power. You remember the Iran hostage crisis. If you've seen the movie Argo, maybe that will help some people understand that time period. That happened. 1989, the Ayatollah Khomeini dies, and then the Ayatollah Khamenei, so we're just changing a letter there from O to A, that's why it gets a little confusing in this part too, takes over, and then low-grade tensions between the U.S. and Iran continue. Just super quick, a couple more things here. 2025, taking us to just very recently, you may remember, this past summer, the U.S. targets Iranian nuclear sites. It was called Operation Midnight Hammer. So what does Israel have to do with this? U.S. and Israel, view Iran as this existential threat. 1991, in the Gulf War, was another pivotal point because Iran then views Israel as occupying Palestinian land. So Iran starts to fund Hezbollah and Hamas, and as we've seen, violence, tensions continue. This is just a very kind of very basic, almost kind of gross, outline of a timeline. It does not speak to so much nuance that is built in here, but I wanted to start with that to be able to bring in our guests and then really get into the heart of what's going on now. So William Muck is a professor at the at North Central College of Illinois. And Bill, do you want to go by Bill or William?
William's fine.
Okay. All right, William, specializing in international politics. Thank you for being here. I think, we've gone through some of the historical timelines here. The first question I had out of the gate when I heard that this was happening over the weekend was, why now?
Well, absolutely right. And I think you did a really nice job of kind of walking through the history. And it's hard to understand what's going on now without appreciating that long history where the United States and Iran have been at each other sort of since 1979, right? So this has been a tense relationship and there's been a lot of low-level conflict. But this is the first time we're seeing a dramatic engagement where the United States is attempting to topple the Iranian regime. Okay, so your question, why now? I think primarily because there's a strategic opportunity. Iran is weaker than it has been in decades, and both Israel and Saudi Arabia have been nudging the president to say, like, this is now the moment to topple the regime. Now, we should say that is an incredibly ambitious, incredibly risky strategy, but I think that helps us understand why the president decided to do this at this particular moment.
So when we talk about goals and objectives, we heard the White House Secretary Hegseth, President Trump, they are saying now this morning, they are saying that the goal objective here is, it's not like Iraq, it's not like Afghanistan. This is a targeted strike to wipe out the nuclear capabilities of Iran. And again, I'm just grossly paraphrasing that. There are others, though, who are still questioning objectives here. Walk us through what other questions that people are asking about the goals here.
Well, I think these are important questions because the administration has not been entirely clear and consistent on what the goals of the operation are. So if we think back to 2003, the Iraq War, the Bush administration at that time spent a lot of time talking to the American public, Congress, the international community, making the case for war. The Trump administration hasn't done that, and part of their explanations have shifted. The president tends to have grander visions, talking about regime change, bringing democracy to the Iranian people. The Secretary of Defense today was much more calculating, saying that the job is to remove Iran as a threat. So we're hearing different messages, and that's not uncommon, but it makes it difficult to understand what is the ultimate goal, right? It's hard to get to the finish line if you don't know what that looks like. So I think that's one area where the administration has to be more clear about what are the goals, because the goals will dictate the strategy and the tactics on the ground.
And whether or not regime change was the goal, regime change has happened, and obviously time will tell what that looks like. But you know, the president and Secretary Hegseth have both said, Iran, this is your time. You have this opportunity. Are Iranians in a position to make change? Do they want change?
I think Iranians want change, right? It's hard we don't have any good polling, but a lot of the anecdotal evidence, if we think about the protest movements that occurred over the summer, it's clear the Iranian people are tired of this regime. Both economically, the regime hasn't delivered, but also politically, they've been repressive. So there is a lot of momentum for change. Now, the challenge here is that there's not a clear opposition leader. There's not a clear opposition group. The regime has done a good job of suppressing that. So that's what makes regime change so difficult. Not only are you eliminating the old regime, but you have to find somebody else who can take power. And what we've seen is that air power is really, really good at eliminating a previous threat, but it's not very good at building democracy. So these are some of the challenges that the administration is going to have to grapple with.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as well. This morning, asked by quite a few reporters, timeline, how long are we talking? The president, I think just a short time ago, within the last few hours, put out, I think it was 4 to 5 weeks was his timeline. Secretary Hegseth more hesitant to put together, you know, we're not going to tell you when and where we're going to be and for how long and how many troops and that kind of thing. But, you know, as you talk about, if we look at sort of past situations, you know, if you look at Iraq or Afghanistan, Venezuela, is it possible to kind of just go in, do something quickly and exit and expect it to, and I know you kind of already have answered this, but I'd like to explore that just a little bit more. Are the Iranian people in a position where they're willing to do what it takes to create the change that they may want?
It's really difficult to do in a short period of time. So I think the president has been clear. He wants this quick and decisive. He is looking to Venezuela as a model, right? And Venezuela was an incredibly successful military operation, but it's fundamentally different than what we're seeing in Iran. Iran has a Republican Guard of 150,000 troops. They've got an entrenched regime that is heavily armed. There is not a real good opposition force to push back against them. So the challenges of Iran are fundamentally different than we see in Venezuela. So I think that's what makes this really complicated for the regime, for the administration, right? And so we're also thinking about the president is saying, we're going to carry out, you know, attacks from the air. You do the work on the ground. Really difficult to do that. So we don't know where this operation is going to shake out, what direction we'll go. But we should say this is a really, really complicated and ambitious strategy that the administration is pursuing.
How is Iran responding? And I guess the second part of that question is, you know, we're seeing them responding in the Middle East, but also what does it mean for people living in the U.S.?
Yeah, so Iran is going to respond, and we should think about this both in short-term and long-term responses, right? So in the short term, what we're seeing is that they're launching attacks at some of the Gulf states. They're attacking U.S. military bases in the region. They're attacking Israel, and we should expect that to continue at least in the short term. But it might not just be limited to that. We could also see them cause more trouble in the Straits of Hormuz. This is this little waterway next to Iran where 20% of the world's oil passes through. I think they're going to make that more difficult. So Americans could see their gas prices go up. The other thing is that Iran is a dramatically weaker actor than the United States. And weaker actors oftentimes pursue what we call asymmetric responses, right? So this is where we could think about terrorist activity, you know, things that, you know, within the U.S. homeland. Now, I'm not saying the odds of that are high, but Iran will want to preserve itself and make this difficult for the United States. So they are reviewing likely all of these different options. And again, that's what makes these operations so complicated in the long term.
William, as we are going through the coming days and weeks and maybe months here, is there something that you're looking for to happen that could tip this and have it move in a positive direction? Because obviously, as you said, this could go in several different directions. Is there something that you're looking for specifically?
Well, I think there's two sides to this, right? We can think about the military side and the political side. So the conflict is going to continue to play out, and we'll see, how long Iran can continue to respond, how long the U.S. military wants to continue to be in the region. So those are sort of the military questions. The other really important questions are the political ones. How does the American public respond to this? Are they supportive of the war? Where is the president at? Right? We can't forget that midterms are around the corner, and this will likely play a role in all of those calculations. So we have to think about both the military logistics of all of this, but also the political implications. What are we seeing at home? How is everybody responding to that? Because again, politics is a mix of all of those things.
Yeah, so many things that we don't have time to touch on here. We saw Democrats over the weekend saying, what are we doing? This is the president kind of going rogue. I'm curious. And we'll have time to get into that as the days play out here. Is there anything else that you feel like people aren't talking about as we close up here that you want to get across?
Well, I think, again, the most important thing I'm really looking for out of the administration is for a clear articulation of their goals. What do they want to accomplish? Because if those are shifting, it's hard to know what the strategy is going to look like, right? So we should be pushing the administration to say, let's be a little more clear about what the goals are and then how you're going about. And if there's some clarity there, I think we'll have a much better sense of the duration and the type of operation we're going to watch play out.
Yeah, and I know Secretary Hegseth was pushed on that quite a bit today, and it sounds like they have landed in a place of disarming the nuclear capabilities of Iran, and also said there's just a lot we can't talk about too, right? We don't know, we meaning the public don't know what we don't know in all of this as well. So it gets really, really complicated. So we appreciate you trying to parse some of this out for us and spending some time, and love to chat with you here as things start to unfold a little bit more.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Professor Muck.